To start things off this morning, we have a great keynote address from California State Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia. Assemblyman Garcia is a longtime member of WELL. He led our planning of our 2015 Palm Springs conference, and he currently represents Assembly District 56, which includes the cities of Indio, Coachella, the Salton Sea, El Centro. Assemblymember Garcia has an incredible track record in advocating for the human rights to water, environmental restoration, and water resilience planning. I know he has an important message for us today. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce a friend, an ally, and someone who many people look to for leadership in the state of California, State Assemblymember Eduardo Garcia. Eduardo?
Good morning, Victor. Ladies, gentlemen, participating in this year's activities with WELL. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's always good to be able to speak to fellow elected officials, commissioners, and those who are serving their community. As Victor mentioned, my name is Eduardo. I represent California's 56th Assembly District, located in the Eastern Riverside County, specifically the Coachella Valley and Imperial County, the county that is all the way down adjacent to the Mexicali-Calexico border. That happens to be home to many members of the family. It's with great honor that I get just a few minutes to chime in a bit in terms of what's happening in Sacramento as it relates to water policy, the conversations with the budget as the May revise was disclosed by the governor several weeks ago, and now negotiations between both houses begin. Specifically of much interest, I would hope, is the conversation around the drought, the conversation around investing into safe drinking water, the issue of paying debt when it comes to our water utilities, both public and private. Many people have fallen behind in being able to assist those families with catching up, bringing some form of economic relief to them. And then just touch a little bit on Assembly Bill 1500, which is a climate resiliency bond that intends on investing quite a bit of money on water infrastructure related matters. So I'll start with just a little bit of background. I come from local government. I did serve as the elected mayor of the city of Coachella for 8 years, 2 additional years on the city council. I got to oversee a number of different agencies that the city council has responsibility for, and one of them was the water and sewer enterprises of the city, which is where I began to learn more about water policy, water infrastructure, the need to maintain and operate the systems for purposes of delivering on safe, clean drinking water to its residents. I got the opportunity there to dabble into some policies at a state level as it related to new regulations being imposed on small communities across the state of California with a good intention, the intention of ensuring that water is safe to drink. And of course, always when you add some regulation, you definitely add some enhanced costs to that. So I got involved at the early stage, even before arriving to the Capitol, on advocating on behalf of our small water systems to make sure that there was a fair, balanced approach to imposing new regulations that could be potentially costly, but that have at the front and center the importance of protecting public health, and certainly not going to deny that. So that's a little bit of a background. I've been in the Assembly now for 6 years, and I chair the Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee. It's been truly an honor to be able to bring a perspective that is not completely urban and not completely rural, somewhere in between. But nevertheless, being able to put our issues on the table and navigate through this very complex water policy system that California has. I want to talk a little bit about the drought, as I mentioned, something that is extremely important for many reasons. The fire-prone season is in front of us, and it has a lot to do with climate changing. At the same time, the impacts on less water being available. 2% average snowpack is currently what we receive on an annual basis these days. And what we're seeing is the majority of our reservoirs at half capacity. We want to acknowledge and applaud the governor's steadfast action on declaring a water drought emergency in specific counties, and we anticipate that that will be the trend in the coming weeks and months for other parts of the state. But what does that mean for us in California? Well, it means, higher risks of fires. It means higher risks of communities, smaller communities, Central Valley area, being at risk of not having enough water to provide for everyday people to survive. That's what a drought means in California to folks like myself who come from a desert and who have been advocating for the issue of safe, clean drinking water for all Californians. It also means that we have a need and an opportunity to take some action when it comes to investing in infrastructure, as well as some proactive things that we can do to ensure that people in California don't go without water. And that's where the budget negotiations come into play. We have to approve a budget by June 15th. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of proposals by the Senate, by the governor, and now the Assembly in negotiations with all two of the other entities in trying to ensure that we make a significant investment into the drought infrastructure needs that we have. And they're quite a bit, depending on where you are in the state of California. But as I mentioned, what drives this conversation for us is the insurance to be able to provide safe, clean drinking water to our economically disadvantaged communities that look like ours in the Eastern Coachella Valley and parts of the Imperial County as well. And so we want to make sure that that issue is front and center when we're talking about where our investments are going to, where we might be able to be proactive and begin preparing for this long drought that unfortunately will be in front of us for quite some time. There are some dollars that are being proposed. We understand that to address the safe, clean drinking water in California, somewhere in the range of $4.5 billion is what's needed. And we're hopeful that in this budget, and because of the unexpected surplus revenues, that we can actually take a good amount of that money and invest it towards the safe, clean drinking water policies that we've adopted in California, which basically say no one should go without clean water in our state. We know that in the Senate, they have proposed a number in the range of 1.5 billion. In the bond that we have put forward, we're closer to 2 billion. We're hoping that we can increase that amount just a little bit more to be able to address this very significant problem. I'll also tell you that we are strongly advocating for the Senate and the Assembly to go a bit further than the governor for purposes of making sure that our ratepayers in California can catch up with the utility bills. Right now, there's a number of $1 billion, and we know that the number, it has to be higher than that. And we're hopeful that we can double that investment to be able to have people catch up and again, bring them some economic relief. Those are some of the issues that are happening right now, conversations that are taking place between leadership in both houses and the governor's office. I want to also just touch a bit on the AB 1500 climate resiliency bond that also focuses a significant amount of attention on water infrastructure investment to ensure that we can take a stronger and more proactive approach on these drought circumstances that are seeming to be more common these last few years here in California due to the climate changing. And for us, that is a top priority in terms of the issue of addressing climate change in our environmental justice communities and the issue of safe, clean drinking water, of course. For me, really, I bring a perspective, as I mentioned earlier, that is somewhat unique, not a rural, not a urban, but a kind of combined approach to setting public policy in what is a very complex water policy system as a whole in California that really needs a tremendous amount of revamping when it comes to how we move water, how we store water, how we recycle and reutilize water for purposes of making sure that we can avoid these emergency declarations when it comes to the droughts. I will stop there and just say I want to encourage you all to really engage on the water policy front. It is extremely important, whether you're a local government elected official, a school board member, a community advocate. The issue of water policy is extremely important to the future economic growth of your community, of the state, and of course, how we can utilize investments into the infrastructure to also put some people back to work throughout the state. And we are looking at these investments through that lens, an economic recovery lens. And we know that these could be good paying jobs in our local community that at the same time will be bringing the much needed update to our infrastructure to continue to provide, in kind of full circle, affordable, safe, clean drinking water to the people of California, and of course to the people who you have been elected to represent. So just wanted to encourage you all to dive in, roll up your sleeves, and really get to learn more about the water system in your backyard and how it ties into the larger scheme of water systems and policy in California. One of the most important subjects that we have to really, really understand in order to get this work done. I want to say thank you again for the invitation. It's always great to be able to speak to fellow Latino and Latina elected officials, and I'm sure that there are a number of other groups that are participating with us today. This message is for you too. We appreciate the work that you do, and thank you again for the invitation to say a few words this morning.